The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Welcome to it, Thursdays here at Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager, and you were streaming the Huskers, our old boy David Gustafson. You know what? Road win for Big Red Baseball, a 6-5 comeback in 10. We'll tell you about it and kind of lay out the particulars. Welcome in, Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, Connor Clark. Numbers to get in, 489-1240. 489-1240 or 800-825-5865. Can email the show, Chris at hailvarsity.com. I always get a kick out of Moonbot7 saying, howdy, nerds. Don't know if he's talking. I think he's talking to us. We'll shout out the stream, the starting five, and roll call coming up here in a moment. Hail Varsity YouTube, where you can be a part of this wonderful community. Subscribe, like, tell a friend, all that good stuff with Hail Varsity YouTube.
But before we get there, we do need to ask the question to Connor Clark. How was jail? We had we had some theories in the stream yesterday saying
Where's Connor? Where's
not
Connor?
being here yesterday, the day after his
I'm never in
22nd
on
birthday.
Wednesdays.
No.
Come on, guys.
Because you're doing you have to report to prison.
Well, yeah. I got to go do jury duty.
Parole officer.
He's got to go see his parole officer, Jake.
I got to go get new batteries for my ankle monitor every Wednesday. That's what I got to go do.
Do you have to call your PO first before you go get the batteries? Or think you're jumping ship?
That's classified.
Connor speaks like a man who's never been on parole. I've never been on parole.
Oh,
Schmidt, you ever been on parole?
No, I have not. But I had a buddy that got into some juvie trouble.
How do you do that?
How would he do that? Let's just say he ate a bag of mushrooms and threatened a Pizza Hut guy.
I mean, the guy worked for Pizza Hut. He had to have it coming, right?
No, not at all.
Started off on the wrong foot.
No lawsuit. No lawsuit.
Yeah,
a buddy of mine in high school, he lived like 3 doors down from my now wife, then girlfriend, and we would go visit him because he couldn't come see us.
You guys brought the mushrooms?
No. No. He just... He partook in something illegal and wrong, freaked out, and you threatened a delivery guy. That's no good. You end up with some jewelry around your ankle, and your summer sucks. Lesson to those who have children, or maybe you are a teen. Don't do it.
Who was it Contavious Caldwell-Pope that was playing for the Lakers in an ankle bracelet?
No.
I can't remember who it was.
That's funny.
The alleged ankle bracelet?
No, like he had it like over his sock. Everyone could just see he had the ankle bracelet. Yeah, it was Contavious Caldwell-Pope.
That's awful.
Old KCP had the ball for a couple weeks with an ankle bracelet on. They got pictures and everything.
Did it distract the opposing team's free throw shooting? And it just beeped?
Yeah. They got louder and louder and louder.
He would bend down before the first free throw and turn the volume up.
Now, imagine how nice that's got to be for the parole officer, though, of KCP. Like, oh, you're going to the Lakers game tonight? I swear, it's for work. It's for work. I'm going to make sure.
I'm going to make sure you go. Get me courtside.
Yeah.
Do it now.
Yes.
So, good news as we get off of the Connor in jail fixation. That took a wrong turn. But, yeah, I have not had an ankle bracelet ever. Never had to go to court. Probably got caught too many times for speeding as a teen. But there's my confession, okay? But, yeah, I had a buddy that made a wrong decision under the influence. So don't do that. Do Nebraska baseball. When you're down 4 runs in the 9th and you push across 4 to head to extras, that's big. We'll dive into it. Nebraska basketball, they get rolling at 5:30 Central, so we'll Have plenty of Husker talk leading up. Brandon Vogel from Counter Read joins us in about 15 minutes. He was on a pretty cool podcast, and they were talking to Vogues about his latest column. Well, a column last week he did on home field advantage. And with that being said, they asked the fair question, has Nebraska football lost its home field advantage? We can chew on that a little bit. Think about how important it's been for this would-be tournament run for Nebraska basketball. Think about that PBA magic where you're 17-1. You've taken down a 1 seed. At one time, you took down 6th-ranked Wisconsin, and they have helped will you back into some games that have been tight, specifically Michigan State and Northwestern. And there's always a play or two, fellas, that sets the crowd off, and then that energy's contagious, and the crowd feeds the players feed the crowd, and it's been just awesome. It's so good at PBA. It needs to come back. It needs to travel just up the road to Memorial Stadium. You start winning ball games, you start winning some tight ball games. It is electric at Memorial Stadium, so we can decide that. FanDuel has the odds out for conference championship in the Big Ten. So Vogues this hour, Gary Barnett in less than an hour, Danny Burke with us with Burke's Best Bets, and he'll join us a little bit after 5:30. 489-1240 or 800-825-5865. Catch us on the social media platforms, Hail Varsity Radio, Twitter at HVarsity Radio. Give that a follow. Find Elijah on Twitter at Herbalessence, at C_Clark_27 is Connor's Twitter. Mine at Schmidt_radio.
You can tweet at me while I'm in jail.
Yeah, because he'll get that drop phone from his roommate in jail. So NU Grandpa is in at first. Jeff checks in second. Moonbot 7 third. And Andrew in at 4. Crew says hello. In at 5. And Crew, good for you. Crew says he's playing hooky. He's playing hooky to drink alcohol, smoke cigarettes, and play video games. Well done, Crew. Ronnie checks in at 6. Patrick in at 7. And Brandon in at 9. So the more the merrier. You're all welcome to jump in.
I think we're missing an 8, though. I think Brandon's technically an 8.
I think he is, too. Don't let anyone ever tell you, Brandon, you're anything lower than an 8. All right? You're an 8 in our eyes and our eyes only. There we go. But, guys, pretty interesting day in the sports world for Nebraska. And we'll take more of your – I don't want to hear jail stories, but did you have a buddy that had to wear an ankle bracelet? And if you want a confession Thursday, go for it. If you, too, had to wear an ankle bracelet, it's all right. I'm going to keep my buddy's name anonymous.
Good.
Just because. I believe he's reformed and married with children. So good on him. But
so he's not sitting next to you.
No.
Wait, hey.
Not at all.
We let off this conversation by saying I have no experience with an ankle bracelet either. So.
Right. That's important. We'll talk to Vogues about his history. I'm kidding. Vogues, you don't have any criminal history, do you? No. Next question. So the question is this. I want to ask you about Nebraska basketball. Does Rink or Wilcher replicate Game 1? I ask that because here's their numbers, their last 6 games. Rink is averaging 6 points a ball game. He is 4 for 17 from the floor. This isn't to dogpile on either. This is just noting their production's dropped off. Meanwhile, you've had Bryce and you've had Jamarcus Lawrence step in and perform really well. So Nebraska has anywhere between 3 and 5 guys that'll get double figures on you. You just don't know the 3 to 5 that'll do it. More so, we'll settle at 4. They've been a very balanced attack. But Rink's numbers, 0 for 6 from 3, and he is 4 for 17 from the floor. C.J. Wilcher shooting 18%, 6 of 33, averaging 2.7 points a game. His last 6, he is 2 for 21 from 3. Both of them killed Ohio State. Rink went for 36. CJ came in and hit 4 threes off the bench for 16. Do one need to get going? Do you think one of the two will be a role in covering that or winning outright tonight if you're Nebraska?
Well,
line's 3.5.
What was the quote from Connor Clark last week about this Husker basketball
about
team?
how they're beautifully inconsistent.
Exactly. They have a good number of guys that could step up. Does somebody need to step up tonight? Yes, absolutely.
Will somebody step up tonight?
You would think. Does it need to be one of those two? I would say not necessarily. Not necessarily.
Worked pretty well last time both of them stepped up for an easy win.
Our good friend Thew chimes in on the stream saying Juwan Gary has the big game tonight.
Back-to-back big games for Juan, huh?
Saying Juwan missed the first matchup against Ohio State as well, so it's an added factor of another guy that Ohio State didn't have to deal with the first time around. I like that answer. Could it be Kisei? Sure. Could it be Rinkmash? Sure. I just have a feeling that somebody will get a hot hand tonight, and Fred will know when to ride that hot hand. That's what it's going to come down to, and that's kind of the maturity we've seen with this Husker basketball team, is you've seen guys forcing it less, more team effort. Maybe it's Sam Hoiberg with some steals off the bench. I mean, there's so many different candidates of being a guy who could step up for this Husker basketball team. That's what makes them dangerous, and I mean, it's been probably 6 games since Nebraska didn't have a guy step up in a big-time moment. You have to probably go back to that Northwestern road game.
Mm-hmm. I would say it's accurate. I have a couple of things to say about this. First of all, I think the fact or the narrative that Rink Mast hasn't been doing as much
not offensively,
kind of being overplayed. Because when you look at his game-by-game numbers, he's in double figures in 5 of the last 7 games, and one of those 2 games in which he wasn't in double figures, he had 8 points. So he's still scoring. I get it. He's not, like, lighting it up, but you don't really need him to. And on top of that, he has at least 6 rebounds in all of those games but 1, and that was against Indiana on the road, where he wasn't really a factor at all. I like Rink to have a good game tonight. Obviously, do I think he's going to put up 34 and 10 again? No, but he shot the 3 incredibly well the first time out against Ohio State. But the things he did inside, too, I think Fred did a really nice job of getting him a favorable matchup. I think he matches up well with his Ohio State team. He's tough to guard because he can spread the floor and spread things out offensively. So I like Rink to have a good game here tonight. I don't know if he'll be the Nebraska's leading scorer or not, but I think he'll have a pretty solid impact on the game. If I had to bet who's going to be Nebraska's leading scorer tonight, I'll give it to Bryce. Mm-hmm. He's been playing very well as of late. And then another thing that I'll say, and this is just about the game in general, and maybe people will get mad at me for this, but if Nebraska wins tonight, I have the key in hand to lock up that lock.
Okay, gotcha.
That's
what it is.
That's where I'm going.
You're not wrong. You get a 4th quad 1 win, fifth. So they're at 1. It fluctuates from time to time depending on what mood K-State is in. But yeah, you get a 5th. Yeah, they lock up the NCAA tournament tonight. Period.
Yeah.
And they may have read that on their phones, as Fred would say.
They definitely have.
So how do they come out? Do they come out tight? Do they come out loose? Do they come out Illinois ready? Or do they come out Maryland ready?
Well, what they need to come out with is defensive intensity.
Yeah, that's what it comes down to. That's travel.
When Nebraska goes on the road, how many times this season have you heard such and such team is shooting the best percentage they have from behind the arc all season long? This is the most 3-pointers they've hit in a game all year long. Yada, yada, yada. The list goes on. 5 or 6 times Nebraska's gone on the road this season, and it's been that story of, man, this team hasn't shot the ball like this all year long. Whenever it's a trend like that, you don't look at the opponent, you look at the defense. So I think it starts with Nebraska defensively stepping up and making plays, having that full effort, doing the little things, the fundamentals at a very, very high level.
Indiana.
Exactly. And what happens? You come out with a 15-point victory aside from that 5-minute stretch where everybody in Nebraska had to clench. I mean, you have so many moments this season on the road where it's been the defense that's let you down. Like, that's what I think it comes down to is if Nebraska wants to set the tone in this game tonight, the first 5 minutes, first 10 minutes of this game, you need to have the best defensive intensity you've had all year. Because Ohio State's got good feelings going on. They're playing at home. They've had that boost of firing their coach and going with the interim. You need to make sure they don't have good feelings to start out in this game, and it starts to me on the defensive side of the floor.
And what flipped that in round 1 against Ohio State, Bruce Thornton was killing Nebraska. I think the Buckeyes were up 8 early on against Nebraska. and insert the mayor junior. Sammy Hoiberg came in, locked up Bruce Thornton, and Ohio State was never the same. It was that defense that you mentioned, Elijah. And I know Illinois kind of did their thing offensively, but you saw better effort defensively against Illinois. You saw MIA against Northwestern. They perceivably have turned the quarter with their Indiana outing, and their last 3 games in Lincoln have been very high-level defensive intensity. So, yeah, it's going to be about the defense. They got to shut Thornton down and then find some folks to either stay hot, if you're Bryce, if you're Jawan, for sure, but get some running mates with you, and it could be a couple of running mates that have not been as consistent on offense.
We may also not see Jamison Battle on the other side tonight. He's questionable. I don't believe he played in their last game. I think he was out at Michigan State. So we'll see what updates we have there, but I would say that's a pretty significant out if he doesn't play.
And what I think that could really open up is the potential for Mass to find Gary in that download, kind of that dunker spot that you've seen them running a lot of the season. If Battle's not out, you look for that game between Mast at the high post, Juwan Gary down on the baseline, ready for a pass. I'll watch out for that if Battle's not playing tonight.
Crew has had a little bit of a confession Thursday with being handcuffed. We'll get to that. Your jail stories somehow. Brandon Vogel talks next from Counter Read.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you at Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager, Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, Connor Clark. Hope you're doing all right on a Thursday. Husker baseball, a comeback win. We'll get to it a little bit, 6-5 at the College of Charleston. We'll check in with Brandon Vogel in a minute. He'll be joining us via the stream. Can watch the show with Hail Varsity YouTube, Hail Varsity Twitter at HVarsity Radio, and, of course, ESPN 590, Omaha's ESPN, that Twitter feed from them, the KFOR Sports Twitter. And you hear us, of course, in Central Nebraska on the Superstation News Talk 900 in Columbus as well, 489-1240. So, Crew dove in, and somehow we got on the topic of ankle bracelets because the joke of Connor going to jail for his 22nd birthday, that was not accurate. Crew says, I've been handcuffed for being mistook for using the bathroom in the back of someone's truck bed outside of the bars, but I was let go. Thank you, officer. Brandon Vogel wonders what he just walked into.
That reminds me of a story of another friend of mine here in downtown Lincoln who was walking back to his apartment after a night on the town, and a police officer pulls up next to him and asks if he's doing all right, where he's going to, and he explains the situation.
Yes, officer.
Well, and the officer says, oh, hey, you want a ride? I can get you a ride to your apartment. He's like, yeah, I almost said his name. He's like, yeah, sure, I'd love a ride. So the officer says, all right, let me just pat you down, make sure you don't have any weapons on you or anything. And he pats him down, puts him in the car, and they start driving off. And my friend goes, you're going the wrong way. And the officer goes, no, I'm not. And he goes, you're not taking me home, are you? And the officer goes, no. And he spent a night in the drunk tank.
Wow.
No good. Vogues, no easy way to transition. How are you?
I'm doing well. Sounds like I'm doing better than Elijah's friend was that night, for sure.
Absolutely. Vogues, big night for Nebraska. We'll stay with Ohio State, Nebraska here. Get your thoughts on this matchup before we get into a recent pod appearance and the topic again, a home field advantage. But home field's been great, PBA per se, for Nebraska basketball, 17-1. It's not been so great for Nebraska football. They look to fix that. But first things first, how about a second road win for Fred and company tonight in conference?
It would be pretty big. Nebraska, a slight underdog in this game, probably a slight underdog for the last time in the regular season. They should be favored. It's certainly at home over Rutgers and over Michigan on the road in the regular season finale. So this is kind of the one where when we were looking at it maybe a week or two out, you're like, that one might be kind of tough. Nebraska's played really well of late. So I kind of view this as a little bit of maybe bump the ceiling up a tiny bit, because I think at this point, nothing's changed from the last time I spoke to you guys. Like I would say at this point, Nebraska's pretty safely in, and I think most of the projections say that in terms of the NCAA tournament. This becomes then an opportunity to show that Nebraska's not just in, but maybe they're closing the regular season on a real run of momentum here. And then we can stop worrying about with a win tonight, you stop worrying about, I think, is Nebraska in? Do they have the resume to be there? To like, could this team do something in the NCAA tournament other than just get there?
It's Brandon Vogel with us here on Hail Varsity Radio. And Brandon, one of the things that Connor brought up, and it might be on the team's mind tonight, is it win tonight and you're a lock for the NCAA tournament? Is that the place you're at with another quad one opportunity tonight? And obviously, a loss against Michigan or a loss against Rutgers wouldn't look great, but you think that the resume that they've built, combined with another quad one victory tonight, might be enough. Do you feel the same?
I do. I mean, I think getting to 21 wins, based on some of the models that are out there, is kind of the point where things tip pretty definitively in Nebraska's in favor, and they're right on the cusp of that. They've got 3 chances left to get that remaining win, and to do it tonight against a quad one team would be a bonus. And I don't know how much the committee ends up looking at this, but they flashed it during Nebraska's last game. The absence of quad 3 or 4 losses, I think speaks to where this team is too. So not in any danger of that tonight. So it's kind of all upside from my perspective for the Huskers tonight in Columbus.
Brandon Vogel is with us on Hail Varsity Radio. I was watching some things earlier today, and the topic of Fred Hoiberg being Big Ten Coach of the Year is quite a popular one on the hardwood. Would you agree that he is the front runner?
I think so. It showed up during the Huskers' last game too. Ben Jacobson probably will have some support, but for Hoiberg, when you stack all of his seasons to this point, and it's been kind of a strange and twisty and turry ride over his time at Nebraska, but you just look at it, the win total has increased each year, culminating in this year so far. It takes some special circumstances at a lot of places, I think, for a coach to be in, year 5 before you're kind of knocking on the tournament door. But here they are, and I think Nebraska has this Nebraska team. When we look at the parts it had in the offseason, new players, returning players, etc., I think it was clear, at least to me, that Hoiberg liked the potential of this team. I think they're close to maximizing like what they're capable of at this point, and if you can do that, that's the recipe for Coach of the Year contention in any sport, I think.
Vogues, you were on a podcast this week, and they were talking about your story when it comes to home field. What's your feeling here? Why is Nebraska so good, apples and oranges, at home in basketball, but why has it been less than difficult? It's probably been difficult, but the results haven't looked that way for Nebraska at home at Memorial Stadium.
Yeah, it's a tough one to answer. The thing that I would point to, or at least theorize, is, the difference in history between the two programs. Like, Pinnacle Bank Arena is still new enough, and it's just a nice place to go watch a basketball game. It's convenient in terms of its location. And Nebraska, of course, has never lacked for fan support for any sport. But when you look at the Huskers as the only kind of major basketball team that hasn't won an NCAA tournament game, you kind of go into those games, I think, a little bit freer. Nebraska football has so many expectations, all earned based on their storied history, that I think the mindset's just different when you go to a Husker football game, particularly of late. And you've had so many close losses, you kind of it's a little like basketball. In basketball, through its history, you're waiting for the other foot to drop. Football, it seems strange to have that kind of sense of panic if you're of a certain age. and lived through, sort of at least pieces of the Osborne era, much less anything beyond that. Like, I think it's just, there's so much more tension around football playing at home that just doesn't exist for basketball, I don't think.
Well, Brandon, as you talk home field advantage as well, does the plans, the demolition and construction of South Stadium, does that make you feel better about home field advantage in the future? It's lowering the capacity of Memorial Stadium, but you might get some seats that are closer to the stadium, that student section move closer to the stadium. Is that good for the environment of Memorial Stadium? Is it bad for it? Time will tell. What's your take there?
I think it has the potential to be a positive. I definitely don't look at it as a negative. And I mean, I guess if we're talking about, a 10-year look back of Nebraska's performance relative to expectations at home, maybe changing something is good. I mean, ultimately, I think the only thing that kind of flips the home field advantage a little bit back on for Nebraska in football is simply winning some big games there in particular. I mean, you're always going to schedule, a handful of games non-conference that you're probably going to win, and Nebraska still has won those for the most part. Yeah, they lost to Troy and they lost to Georgia Southern and Northern Illinois, but for the most part, they still win those games. They just don't play quite as well as expected based on the numbers that are out there. But when's the last like big home game Nebraska's won in terms of football?
Oregon.
Sparty.
In 2015 when you were 4 and
yeah, I mean it's 9 years, dude.
Yeah. I mean, and in terms of ranking, it certainly was, but it was kind of like oh, this was a nice dessert at the end of a meal that wasn't all that great. So at least we got the coffee.
Oh, it's ice cream.
I think you can go Oregon 2016.
I mean, that was a college football playoff team they beat in 2015.
Yeah, that's probably close with what we knew about those two teams then, and Nebraska would go on to have a good 2016. Oregon would not, but that felt like a pretty big game. I mean, there's not an easy one to point to. Like, we have to kind of like throw out candidates and like, what if we talk about this one? And I think that's the point. Like, because what you want home field to be is, even if you're a program that's maybe struggling a little bit or in the midst of, a rebuild, you would hope that you can just knock one of these teams off at home, even if you're not quite there yet, even if it's a little bit lucky, which I guess is kind of what that Michigan State win was in 2015.
One more difference between Pinnacle Bank Arena and Memorial Stadium, Brandon: alcohol. You have bars very close to Pinnacle Bank Arena and beer sales inside the arena.
You have to sneak yours in, Vogues, to Memorial Stadium.
Let's not say you. Let's say one would have to.
Right. Well, Vogues never had to sneak anything in. So I'm interested. That is, I just wonder. It'd be fun to do a straw poll next Big Ten media days, even with the new look Big Ten, and say, all right, do you think of Nebraska as a place, man, I don't ever want to go back there and play again? And that's been a long, long time since that's probably been in the back of somebody's mind, an opponent.
Yeah, I would agree. It's hard because the place is, it's always full. People are there. They're excited. They're ready to like have an impact on the game. And so often, like, it's been hard in terms of how a lot of those games have unfolded. A lot of times it feels like that opportunity doesn't even exist.
Vogues, 2 minutes on the other side. I need to hear about Connor Reed. Can you hang on?
Sure.
All right. It's Brandon Vogel. We'll be back after this.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you, it's Hail Varsity. Gary Barnett coming up in 25 minutes. Thoughts on the college football playoff shakeup. Vogues, I know you wrote about 14 being that new number with the college football playoff. And you've got your automatic qualifiers and the Big Ten. And I think the TV mind with Petiti will rub off on the SEC. with those automatic qualifiers, making sure there is must-see TV regular season. And you go to 14. I know we're hop, skipping, and jumping from 12, but 14 is that NFL model with your AFC, NFC title game, and you'll get your best runner-up in the conference title game as it looks, and your participant and your conference champion winner. Man, what do you think of this smoke with Notre Dame and A&M and expansion here as they are moving towards 14 before the ink is dry for 12?
Yeah, I don't love it. So I can't be surprised. The entire history of the sport is one of being essentially ungoverned, in which the powerful continue to tilt the field to get more powerful. I mean, I went back and analyzed the previous 10 years of the college football playoff rankings, looking at it as if we had a 12-team playoff, and found then, the Big Ten and the SEC are basically going to average 4. So it's like, well, what if we expand this to 14, and instead of just knowing we're going to get 3 teams in every year in the SEC and the Big Ten. What if we could get 4? That's going to happen most of the time. It's like, let's legislate into the game that we get 3 every year. And the revenue split, like, the tough thing with this 14-team proposal that's out there is, like, kind of can't argue with it. It's like, yeah, the Big Ten and the SEC are providing the most value, but it just, like, it's further professionalization in my mind, which as somebody who doesn't watch a ton of NFL because it just doesn't appeal to me that much, like, I feel bad for kind of like the remaining half to 2/3 of the sport that so clearly with this proposal just doesn't matter. It's just like you don't have the leverage to make any of these calls. Like, it's the Big Ten, the SEC. We'll throw an extra spot in for the ACC and the Big 12, which they'll be happy with because, hey, it's an extra spot.
Vogues, let's wrap up here. Rule would have had a couple of his Baylor teams in the playoff, correct?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. I think just the one, just 2019 would have made it.
The one that lost to Oklahoma in the Big 12 title game, is that right?
Okie State or
Oklahoma State, right? Yeah. That one, I think that team would have made it. And then, well, his Temple teams in his final year there was 2016. His Temple teams weren't, I don't think, close enough to get that automatic G5 spot. They got outranked basically by some other top-ranked G5 champion in those years. But yeah, he would have been there once.
What's coming up with Counter Read? Tell us how folks can get locked in with it and what you do.
Yeah, you can just visit us at counterread.com. It's twice weekly Substack newsletter from myself and Aaron Sorensen. Twice weekly for paid subscribers. We also put out a couple of free pieces each week if you want to test us out. I've got a free piece coming tomorrow. That's kind of a discussion starter because I've been puzzling over this. I don't know who Nebraska's best football player is in 2024. And I don't know why that's important to me, but I think it's an important question. So kind of put that out to our readers and hopefully start a discussion and write a little bit more about that next week.
That isn't interesting.
I'm gonna vote. I'm gonna vote Ty.
He's in there. My real dark horse. And to define this, like, sorry, not to take up too much more time.
No, dude, you gotta pull the plug on us. You go for it. You take all the time you need.
It's the guy that opposing coaching staffs have to worry about. They're like, oh gosh, this guy, he's still there. We got to deal with that. I think Robinson's in that conversation. I think Hopmacher's in that conversation. I think Tommy Hill might be in that conversation. But it's interesting because I kind of went through this process, which you can read about tomorrow. Get signed up for the newsletter.
That's good.
It was easy back in, Sue in 2009, probably Prince in 2010, David in 2011, though Taylor Martinez would have gotten a lot a lot of run for that too.
Amir, 2014.
Well, and what's interesting about this discussion is I think
Randy Gregory, 2014.
I think the individual who might be the best on the team right now may not be the best on the team come week 4 of the season with how Matt Rhule and his development works. You look at what Jalen Lloyd put together at the end of last season. What does he look like with another offseason development? Is he now a guy that is a true threat to Big Ten defenses? Could get in that argument. Princewell did really, really well last year in his opportunities. Could that be a guy that by mid-season is now a guy that's leading the defense? There's other options besides the names that are kind of obvious of the guys that were really big contributors last year.
Yeah, it's an interesting question to consider. So hopefully we'll get some conversation around that, and we got time to get it figured out before spring football starts. So it's interesting. You know, some teams you have that guy where it's like, well, there you go, it's him. And Nebraska in 2024, I don't think is a team that I can say that about yet.
Vogues, we'll check in on Saturday. Thanks for a few minutes today.
Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
All right, good stuff from Brandon Vogel. Get him locked up with Counter Read, counterread.com. Him and Aaron Sorensen, awesome stuff as always.
I tell you what, how have we made it this far in the offseason and not gotten to that question of who's the best player on that? It's such a basic question, but it's kind of, you skip right over. You don't really think about it.
It's the polar bear because he's awesome. That's
sure.
Why.
Well,
That's
I mean,
my reasoning.
You've got 2 game wreckers on the interior.
Mm-hmm.
And it all starts on the line.
Well, there's a quote from Searles a couple years ago that what the Husker defense was looking for, and this is back in the Frost era, was a guy that all offenses in their week of game prep have to circle and say, if we don't take care of this guy, we're screwed. Does Nebraska have that next season with the combination of Ty and Nash? I don't think either of them necessarily are
You take one out. I mean, think about when Sue had Crick next to him, or vice versa. I mean, both. Sue went for 12.5 sacks. Crick went for 8.5 or 9. He had 4 or 5 against Baylor, I think, was player of the week, national player of the week, because, well, we're going to put the whole damn line blocking Sue, so Jared Crick is going to go off.
I remember that game because that was one of the last Husker games that was on pay-per-view.
That's right.
That was a thing? I didn't even know
No,
that.
it was.
It was on the Versus Network. You had to pay for it.
Yeah,
Oh, my goodness.
our old friend the quarterback, Kelly, help me out here. Kelly from Rushville, Nebraska.
Kelly Stauffer.
Stauffer started out doing his stuff on Versus.
And it used to
I
be
forgot about the Versus Network. That's crazy.
And it used to be like pay-per-view for Nebraska's crappy non-con games against like Louisiana Lafayette. But Baylor was one of the last ones where it was still pay-per-view because Baylor was really, really bad that year.
Before every and any game was on whatever Plus Network. And, you know, I remember dropping – I had to really lobby as a kid to watch Nebraska, Oklahoma, because Oklahoma and Oklahoma State got a 2-year TV ban for cheating. And, I wanted to see Jerry Godowski's last game. He's Nebraska's quarterback for a year after Steve Taylor, the really good team that just didn't have enough against Colorado and Florida State. But, yeah, we had to drop the $25.99 down to watch Nebraska pay-per-view versus Oklahoma. We'll wind down hour 1 at Hail Varsity Radio.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time this hour, Gary Barnett, 10 minutes away. It's Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager, Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, Connor Clark, and we'll hear a little bit from Fred Hoiberg from yesterday's media session. Nebraska and Ohio State get going here very shortly. And
I was going to say, do we bump up our steak and a beer bet by an hour or no?
We could do it now, I guess.
I know it's kind of weird, but
I'm all right with it. Elijah, are you good? The line right now is 3.5. Ohio State over-under says this thing's like 74-70. Real quick, buckle up, and I'm not telling you about that for tonight's game because it's a road adventure, but use your seatbelt, and it does save lives. It prevents injuries only if properly worn. Make it click. A message from the NDOT Highway Safety Office. Let's do our steak and a beer just because we could cheat a little bit and do our steak and a beer with an in-game bet. So I will start first. Man, give me the points. Kiss of death. Give me Nebraska. On the road, 77-71. Free throws.
You shouldn't have done that, because now I have to go the other way. It's been a tradition in State Innovator. Whoever goes first and has the most confidence always loses.
Is wrong.
But you're taking the points. Wait. What's your final score again?
77-71.
77-71.
Outright.
I will go Ohio State to win and cover slightly, 72-68.
Okay. Half point.
I think I'm getting the key out.
Oh, you're locking it up.
I think I'm locking it in.
You and I agree things are bad.
I think I'm locking it in tonight. I
Actually,
think Nebraska wins.
We agreed home game.
It's when Schmidt and I agree that things tend to get bad.
Yes, okay.
Yeah.
But I think Nebraska wins. I think they're playing too well right now. I know Ohio State's playing well, but they got to come down from the high at some point. Mm-hmm. They don't have their head coach. I know they played well without him, but at some point the reality is going to set in, and I think this Nebraska team's playing with probably the most confidence that they've had all year. So I'm going to go Nebraska on the road. I think the defense continues to do its thing. I'm going to go Nebraska 74 and Ohio State 68.
The one wild card to me here with this game tonight, and I know we're kind of running against it, is the fact that on one hand, I think Nebraska could come in with the sense of confidence with what happened to Indiana, that they've gotten the monkey off their back in the road game. They're not going to bring that same level of intensity that's required to go on the road. But on the other side, I look at it and say, I think if any team is going to be motivated, like with the leadership and the veteran nature of this group, to go out there and be top 4 in the Big Ten and get that double bye, they understand that. I mean, I don't think this team is looking at the Big Ten tournament as like, oh, we can gloss past that. The NCAA tournament's what we want. It's a team that wants to go far in the Big Ten tournament. I think they want that top 4 spot, and that could lead to the intensity. Those are the two things I'm wrestling with in terms of what type of Nebraska do we see tonight.
Nebraska is Will Ferrell and old school hitting the beer bong, okay? They got that first road win. Once it hits your lips, it's so good. Nebraska is trying to get a beer bong road victory. That's what I'm comparing it to. They saw, they understood what it took at Indiana. You've got another wounded team in Ohio State where there's disarray. Go handle it. Go get it figured out. We'll see how they start.
Good teams take care of business.
They do.
Beer bong road victory sounds like a bad band name.
Or a long weekend.
Or maybe a great album name.
Or a way to get an ankle bracelet.
Yeah, that's a good callback.
There we go. Gary Barnett. We will talk to him about the landscape of college football. It's Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager.
The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Back into it at Tower 2. It's Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager. We welcome in the Hall of Fame coach with Colorado and Northwestern. Hall of Fame player down at Missouri. I said Missouri, not Missouri. It's Gary Barnett with us. Coach, how's the week doing? How you been?
Doing well, Chris. Just living the dream down here. It's been nice. A lot of golf. So weather's hung in there pretty well. Just watching everything unfold in college football.
Yeah, there is a ton to get to, and I got to ask if you're a dog whisperer. We have a new addition to the Schmidt household. He's a Bernedoodle. He's going to be a monster. He came with a saddle. Sterling likes to bite mommy and daddy. Cosmo, make that Kramer. Your pup, is he behaved, or is it just a me thing?
No, he's still a puppy. He still likes a little bite. He doesn't bite hard anymore, but he still wants to play all the time. Mm-hmm. And so no, this is a work in progress. I think Shih Tzus are a little bit stubborn, and so he's only 8 months, I think, maybe not. Yeah, closer to 8. Mm-hmm. So we're going to give him a little time. After that, he's got to grow up pretty fast, or he's going to have to find a new home. I don't mean that, but
yeah, that's Sterling was biting mommy's new couch. or newer couch, and him and I had to have a talk. I'm like, look, dude, I can't help you. You keep chewing on her couch. She will be very unpleasant. How unpleasant is it going to get, Coach Barnett, in the world of college football as we've fast forwarded to the topic of 14 teams, but how do you see things negotiating / shaking out with everybody else and then the SEC and the Big Ten when it comes to automatic qualifiers here for the future of the playoff?
Yeah, I don't know if it's going to be unpleasant or just uncomfortable for everybody, but it's sure going to be different. And going to the 14 playoffs, I mean, with two conferences having 3 automatic berths, I think for the, I think overall, looking inside out, if you're in there, if you're in the SEC or the Big Ten or even the Big 12, any of these conferences, you're probably excited that the opportunity is going to come. These things always bring about unintended consequences, and all we can do is really speculate what those might be, and those might be unpleasant, but it'll be interesting to see how bowls survive, and I'm not saying they won't. I'm just saying it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out with that. My guess is the group of 5 isn't going to be extremely happy about this. To think that you're taking, 10 teams from the major conferences and you throw Notre Dame in there as a possibility. The opportunities for them, there'll still be one for sure and maybe more, but it doesn't look like to me that we're expanding opportunities in that direction unless there's just a really good team that, ends up being ranked in the top 14. As I look at it from afar now and sort of away from it, I don't see how 14 teams really exist in this thing. But doesn't mean they won't. They'll have a chance. I mean, it'll go on. It'll be like the basketball tournament, and it'll create a lot of interest. But I do think that the bowls may be in jeopardy here, or at least bowls as we know them. So I don't know what other unintended consequences will be, but we never know those. They just come up all of a sudden.
Gary Barnett with us, Hail Varsity Radio. Right now, as it sits, the 5 automatic qualifying spots, 3 for the Big Ten, 3 for the SEC. That's the word that's being floated out. 2 for the Big 12, 2 for the ACC, 1 for the group of 5. And then you get a spot for Notre Dame, 3 at-large teams. And there was some speculation that Notre Dame and A&M may be thinking about the Big Ten. What do you believe? And do you think the ACC and the Big 12 are in some danger of getting swallowed up by the SEC and the Big Ten?
Well, sure. I think that's been imminent. All that's been imminent for the last 5 years for sure. Notre Dame going to the Big Ten is not a surprise. That I think I've said this before. My second year in the Big Ten, 94, I think, 93, 94, we were sure Notre Dame was going to join the Big Ten.
Wow.
Absolutely sure. And I think all the administrators wanted it, and it made so much sense. And in the long run, would have been good for Notre Dame, but its fan base didn't want to do it, and so that's what happened. And then you look at Notre Dame's choices, and it 2 years ago, 3 years ago, or a few more than that, when they joined the ACC in basketball, the reason that Notre Dame leans towards the ACC is because of the number of private schools in the ACC. There's only one private school in the Big Ten, and that's Northwestern. There's only one. So in the ACC now, and by adding Stanford, you got another one. You got 6 private schools, and private schools at times need people to be on their side. They need to have a cohesive voice. And when you've got 5 or 6 of them, you can have a stronger voice, obviously. And I think that was the big reason why Notre Dame was leaning more towards the ACC, is just because they had alliances with other private schools at that time. So I can see it happening in the Big Ten. It makes a lot of sense, but especially since the Big Ten has sort of outpaced now the ACC, as has the SEC, it's we all know it's going to go to eventually 2 big divisions, and SEC and Big Ten, and then who's in those is going to make a difference. So I don't think being in the ACC, I think you're right, they're going to get swallowed up, the Florida States and the Clemsons of the world, maybe the North Carolinas, and Notre Dame would certainly fit into that mix. I don't understand, A&M going to the Big Ten makes no sense to me, but, I'm not doing it, so.
Is it that they hate Texas and Texas hates A&M, and I don't think they're real thrilled about Texas joining the SEC. A&M's part of the AAU. Would they do it? Could they do it just to get away? I know there's a buyout clause that was put in 2 years ago with the SEC, but A&M just told Jimbo to go away for $90 million. So I mean, money's not a. Yeah. This is crazy money, though. I mean, that I would assume, and I think the Big Ten would love to probably get into Texas.
Well, I'm sure there's part of that. You never say never or always, and so anything could happen in the way things are going. How long can A&M keep running away from Texas? Yeah. Is my question. And so they're already in the best football conference in the country. It doesn't seem to make sense to me, but who knows? Where this is going. I think sometimes they just float this by sportscasters and people who do radio shows like you and me to have something to talk about.
Well, it's been fun. I mean, I love picking your brain on it. I want to pick your brain on how about 3 signing days, because coaches don't get time off anymore, apparently. December, February, and now summertime. What do you think of this? Moving the December back to that Wednesday after the conference title games. I think July or June is what I saw, and then that would now be a 3rd signing day, that first Wednesday in February that used to be the signing day. Is 3 enough? Is 3 too many? Does it matter because you're going to go to the portal anyway?
Well, what you just said makes a lot of sense. It doesn't really matter. I mean, it used to be you're making a decision that's going to affect the rest of your life, and that's how kids and parents looked at it. And that isn't true anymore. So I think they're just trying to simplify things, get things done quickly. Coaches are making so much money they don't need a vacation anymore. So I don't think that's a piece of it, but I do think that it's just not that as important a decision now as it used to be, and it'll seem that way to the kids signing, but everybody knows now that is that isn't worth the paper it's written on anymore.
Gary Barnett's with us, Hail Varsity Radio. Coach, you've covered college football for a lot of years, and I'm really intrigued by this quarterback draft class. This time of year, we talk about who's coming out quite a bit, and you've got the combine around the corner. And just to name off some of the quarterbacks, you've got Nix and Daniels, of course, Caleb Williams, Drake May, Penix, and I'm forgetting probably 5 more names. But of the kids I've just mentioned, who do you like? I mean, what quarterback? Gary Barnett's now in the front office of an NFL franchise. Who would you circle? What is there a top tier? Is there a 1, 2, 3 for you, or do you think it's so deep that you're a franchise that needs a quarterback? You may not get the best guy, but you could get a really good guy.
Yeah, well, I think the Broncos are in the middle of this thing too. They're going to jump in and be part of this. So I watch it a little bit closer. I think Caleb Williams and I think Jalen Daniels at LSU would be my first two choices no matter what. Drake May is going to be a system guy, but a good system guy. Bo Nix, I think, is an outstanding leader and a guy that's going to take a good franchise and make it better. I don't know if he's going to create a Joe Burrow kind of situation, but I do think that he's going to make it. He's going to be a good player. There's a number of guys like that out there, but I think Penix is the same way. I think Penix he's just a guy that people are going to rally around, and he's going to be a good player at that league. And he's going to be a system guy as well, but he can make all the throws. So there's six guys out there that I think Chris can all make it. But I think the two guys that can turn a whole program around are Caleb Williams and Daniels from LSU.
Well, and Justin Fields, you've seen him up close, and, sounds like Atlanta's the spot, and there's a lot of weapons, really good college football players that ended up in Atlanta when you look at the skill guys, and I don't know where Atlanta's offensive line is right now, but if Fields ends up back home in Atlanta, do we give up on quarterbacks too soon, Coach? Because, maybe a change of scenery is going to work for Fields because, Chicago will go all in on Caleb Williams.
Well, I don't know whether we give up too soon, but it's so important that you have to have a special one in the NFL now and really in college. You don't go anywhere without a quarterback. It used to be a quarterback was handing the ball off to a few passes, but now he's the whole offense, and it revolves around him. And so you have to keep trying to find a quarterback because you're not going to be a premier team in your league or your conference or your level unless you have one. So you got to keep looking, and apparently there's enough money out there that you can throw one away and go get another one pretty easily.
Last thought, Gary Barnett with us, Hail Varsity Radio. Coach, Eric Bieniemy is back in college. He's off to UCLA as the OC for Coach Foster. Surprised by this? What do you think?
No, I'm not surprised because I think Eric coached Deshaun. And, if you're Deshaun Foster, it's a pretty smart move because he hasn't been a head coach. I don't even know if he's been a coordinator, but for him to go pick up somebody who has and someone of Eric's, ability and his stature, that it's a good move for him. He's going to have all Eric's experience there in that room with him to help him as a head coach, but also run a program, run an offense. So I think it's a good move.
And there's got to be a lot of wow factor, doesn't there, with Bieniemy in his resume for potential recruits, I'd think.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I don't know how to gauge that anymore. But, as we get older, there's less wow factor about older guys. So it's more about the younger guys. So Bieniemy's getting up there. So
that's true. Wasn't yesterday that he was going, for 5 touchdowns, right? In Lincoln. Gary Barnett with us. Coach, you take care and have a good weekend.
All right, Chris. Great being with you.
Good to spend time with Barty, get his thoughts on a lot of things in the world of college football. We'll talk some Husker baseball in just a moment, but do we have a revision, Elijah Herbel?
We might. We've got some news in on Thornton. We might
not Thornton Mellon from back to school, but Thornton, the headache for Ohio State. Hail Varsity continues. We're powered by Cornhead Lager.
Hail Varsity Radio is live. Now, back to Schmitty.
Schmitty's a great guy, but he don't have a brain.
And Elijah.
You want me to speak? We're not pointing you yet.
On Hail Varsity Radio.
Back in Burke's Best Bets, Danny Burke in 15 minutes. Get his take on some props or just maybe some money makers for you in the world of pro and college. Hail Varsity, we're powered by Cornhead Lager. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, and Connor Clark. Reminder about your friends at the Supernovas. Still time to be a part of the incredible experience at CHI with the Supernovas. Pro Volleyball, Nebraska's very own, supernovas.com. Log on, get your single game tickets, or maybe still time to do that season ticket thing. And the roster is loaded with NCAA Olympians, national champions, All-Americans, the best of the best. And go see them today with the Supernovas, supernovas.com, where you can log on and find out. Okay, Thornton out for Ohio State.
Likely
out.
And we know this. Apparently, he's been dealing with a migraine today.
Yeah, I was going to say, out of all things, he's got a migraine.
And that's why Schmidt threw in the headache for
Maybe
Ohio
it's a
State.
headache.
That was
smooth.
Yeah. Anyway, he is confirmed to not be one of the starters for Ohio State last night, so you can read into that how you will. Considering a guy that started, I think, every game for the Buckeyes this year, not in the lineup, you can assume he's out, but we don't have any official confirmation.
Can you send NIL money to opposing players to not play?
No.
I'm just asking out loud for the class.
No.
No, I'm just wondering.
I'm gonna second that. No.
It's the Wild West of NIL, but something tells me that cross like you still can't advertise. Let's see. It has to be related to, or it cannot be related to on-field performance.
Okay.
Which I think would apply to that, but then you also have it can't be advertising.
So
for
if
beer
you're
or anything
so if
like
you're
that.
the WNBA and Caitlin Clark is declared for the draft, what possible signing bonus can you give her that's going to top what Iowa NIL's feeding her? Better be something sweet, or she just wants to move on. Sorry to switch gears here midstream, but that's somewhat newsworthy today. But back to Nebraska, are you changing your bet?
I think I might be.
How did the number jump? I think we had an expert in the stream here, Hail Varsity YouTube. Watch the show and subscribe and like, and then be a part of the community and give us your thoughts on all sorts of things. KG Kids for Life says, never forgot that Eric Bieniemy got into a fight in the Super Bowl. So there's some Bieniemy love in the stream. But, I mean, the line jumped, and it sounds like that was more towards the VIG.
And it should note that within the past 30 minutes, line has dropped to point. It's Ohio State minus 2.5. With that in mind, I will be flipping my stake in a beer bet, a late-moving line.
So we're unanimous.
That's only worth a point?
So far. I mean, this is late-breaking news in.
That's
this
true.
could change more in the next 3 minutes before opening tip.
Better hurry.
But I will say, and I'm going to
better hurry to the book.
Right before the end.
You got 30 seconds.
Yeah, run.
Right at the death, Elijah Herbel will be changing his pick. He will be taking Nebraska outright tonight because Thornton's not in. Jamison Battle is in the starting lineup, so that's something to note.
Okay, so he is playing.
He is, in fact, going to be playing, but Thornton's going to be out. I think that's enough for me to swing it back to Nebraska. I'm not sure Ohio State's going to have enough points to match Nebraska, especially with how well Nebraska's been shooting the ball. I guess you find a guy who can shoot the ball well over the past couple of games. Nebraska's been putting up good points. I don't think Ohio State's got enough points, and I got Nebraska now an 8-point victory at 76-68.
A part of me doesn't like that Bruce Thornton isn't playing because I feel like to everybody else it's going to take some validity away if Nebraska ends up winning tonight. I think they beat him with Bruce Thornton anyway. Mm-hmm. And I know you could say they already beat Ohio State fully healthy earlier in the year anyway, but it was at home, the whole home versus road argument.
At this point in the
I'm
season,
reading too much into
Nebraska
it.
and Fred deserve some breaks.
Yeah, I was going to say, at this point in this season, take your wins where you can get them, especially whenever you're maybe one win away.
Sure, yeah.
Like, whether or not he's playing.
This is strictly national perception.
Yeah, who cares about national perception
I
at this point? I don't care at this point. Like, get a win where you can. This is going to help Nebraska get a win significantly. I think this is big news for Nebraska, and considering it could be the final quad one victory you need to lock up an NCAA tournament berth, you'll take it where you can get it.
So Brian asks a difficult question with this steak and a beer. If the Huskers win, are we all going streaking? That was in reference to the
in the quad or no?
Well, I mean, it was in reference to the old school quote, that road win is much like that Will Ferrell beer bong. Once it hits your lips, it's so good, i.e., getting a road win. The pregame streak versus the postgame, less shrinkage, says Brian, from a temperature standpoint.
There we go. Interesting.
Some mitten clips. Away we go.
We're off.
Did you guys hear the story regarding the Super Bowl streaker on why he ended up?
Yeah, because he bet money because the odds were so against someone being able to pull off streaking
that he basically paid for his front row Super Bowl seat.
He did. He made what, $40,000?
$40,000 which he put
made
in,
a lot of
which most of it went towards his Super Bowl ticket, but he got to skim some off the top.
Didn't he make like $10,000 in profit? I think that was the number.
Yeah,
like,
something like that.
Yeah, and all it cost him was a few $100.
A night in jail, a permanent ban from that stadium. I'm sure. Maybe
the NFL's probably going to gonna make sure he's not welcome. So, Husker baseball. Let's talk Charleston. Let's talk Big Red. Charleston was unbeaten. The Huskers, listen, you had Drew Christo, made a start. What can Nebraska get and expect from him? Junior now, and can he take the reins? 6 2/3, 4 hits, 3 runs, 2 of which were earned. Just 1 walk and 2 strikeouts. Nebraska used 8 pitchers. Shout out to Kyle Perry. Was nice. Evan Borst came in and helped Perry in the 9th. And then Tucker Timmerman worked 1 batter and got it handled in the 10th. It went extras because Nebraska was down. They were down 5-1 going into the top of the 9th. They score 4. And then it worked out well with Bradford. He got a ground rule double. Almost sent it out opposite field. Nebraska bunts him over to third. And then you get Cole Evans hit a shot to third. The third baseman rushed his throw home as Bradford was able to score from third on a hot smash, as Harry Carey would say, to third. And it didn't work out well for College of Charleston. Nebraska wins it 6-5 in 10, and that is all sorts of adrenaline. That's all sorts of momentum, and not only the comeback, but then the finish.
Well, and how about who Nebraska turns to in the bottom of the 10th to go close it out? We talked after that first weekend about Dice's impressive performance against Baylor on the opening night, but it's not Dice they turn to in the bottom of the 10th here. They turn to a true freshman, Tucker Timmerman. And Timmerman's been lights out to start this season. And to turn to him in that moment, late in that ball game, needing the win, needing 3 outs, says a lot about what Nebraska thinks they have in Tucker Timmerman. That's a guy that's, based on how he's played early in the season, and probably a likely future starter for you. But to be able to go embrace the role coming out of the dugout, every single time he's come in this season, he's been lights out, now going and getting himself a close on the road after a furious comeback. I understand you have the momentum, but that's still a tough spot to put a true freshman into with the pressure on you, knowing your margin for error is thin, a 1-run lead. They turn to him and he goes and closes it out. That says a lot about what Nebraska has in that guy.
Well, it's nice to see them kind of flip that script in literally 2 weeks' time from what you saw in Arlington a couple of times. You see some late leads slip away. You mentioned putting the ball in the hands of a true freshman. I mean, that's not an easy decision to make, first of all, as a skipper. And second of all, it's not an easy situation to go into as an 18-year-old. So a lot of credit to that team, a way to keep battling. And that's what it's going to take to win a lot of games here, especially through the Big Ten, too. I feel like that, they're going to run into some tough midweek games. We saw that last year especially, too. So if they're able to find ways to grind these things out, I know it's not going to be as pretty as it was every single time. They're not going to come back from 5-1 down in the 9th every time. But if they're able to keep their composure even when things aren't going their way late in ball games, it's going to take them a very, very long way.
Huskers are feeling all right. That's 2 in a row for them, which is good, as Nebraska is tied with Ohio State right now, 3 apiece. Our dear friend KG Kids for Life, 3 offensive rebounds for Nebraska so far. They gave up 1 last trip down, and kick out 3 tied things up, but they're highlighting Fred in his 5th season in his career record, and then they're immediately highlighting the record Fred has this year. So
I mean, how
and every Nebraska fan is get it off the screen.
How crazy! It seems to be pretty unanimous from our discussion yesterday. To change topics briefly, that everyone's like, yeah, Fred's done enough to earn himself an extension regardless of how the season ends.
They hated the fact we're even talking about it. Like, duh.
Well, it's like you're talking about a guy who is 60-91, and I understand the momentum of the program, the direction of the program feels different, but we're still talking about a guy that even next season, if he has a season like this one, will not get to 500 overall in his record at Nebraska, which is just a testament to what Fred has put together and how he's flipped the script on what he thought he could do to build up Nebraska with what he actually has had to do to build up Nebraska. It's incredible from Fred that at 60-91, we're talking about a contract extension.
Well, let's not kid ourselves. Like, some of us thought there was a chance that, all right, he wasn't going to be back, and record-wise in the climate of college basketball, college sports, you got to win relatively early because you're getting paid so much. You're paid to perform, and you're paid to perform early. And I love Trev's patience with this because you're sick and tired of the transition, the coaching change that's marred multiple programs over the years, some more quickly than others. So good on Nebraska when it comes to just their patience here, because Nebraska's a little sloppy with the basketball. Rink trying to make a move. They're locking down on him.
I think, is it a violation if we just do play-by-play of the Husker basketball?
We will go to the FCC electric chair.
It turned into a Jamison Battle 3. That's what happened. Everybody.
Yeah, we're getting dangerously close, fellas.
I don't think so. We are not hardwired here. This is all streamed when it comes to what we're watching, so technically it's not live.
I guess the FCC does tend to operate on technicalities.
So let me ask you this, though. Husker Baseball, College of Charleston, 2-2 an okay weekend. You got the first one. Do you want 3-1?
You want 3-1 again.
You want 3-1 again. I totally agree with
Series,
you.
You're okay with if it's 2-2. You say all right, especially with how the first game went. But I think you want to use the momentum from game one, the comeback, to power you through the rest of the weekend and get to 3-1 if possible.
We'll get caught up with Danny Burke, get his reaction to FanDuel and the odds for Nebraska to win a conference championship, some props, and a weekend outlook of some best bets with Danny Burke. That's on the way. It's Hail Varsity, and we're powered by Cornhead Lager.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you, it's Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager, Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, Connor Clark. And we welcome in the pride of Chicago, Danny Burke. Burke's best bets, as we all have a eye on Nebraska. They're down, 13-6 early? Down 7. So we are all over here with our steak and a beer bet.
Well, we talked about the defense
it's
early.
over already.
We taled about the defense early.
Plenty of time for Ohio State to screw it up, right, Danny?
The defensive intensity just hasn't been there, simply put.
This is a tough spot here for Nebraska. Obviously, I don't want to call it a must-win. It's a needed game, but we know how they perform on the road, and I know a lot of these sharp bettors. I stayed away from this one. I know that they were backing Ohio State. Yeah, so once I saw that and equated that with also being on the road, I didn't want to touch this one with a 10-foot pole, fellas.
So what are you looking at here, Danny? What are you eyeing here? NBA, NHL, some college weekend action. I do want to grab your thoughts, though, on FanDuel. And a buddy of yours did an article for FanDuel. And Nebraska, what did we figure out? 75-1?
7.5 to 1.
7.5 to 1. That's a big difference. 7.5 to 1 to win the Big Ten next year. An early look, a futures bet on the Big Red for Matt Rule's second year.
Yeah, I was reading over that article. Like you said, old buddy of mine from UNL, so shout out to Cody Nagel. He does great work at 24/7 Sports, and he did a really good job with the breakdown. And I think something that was really important, and of course is always going to be important when you're handicapping these win totals, odds to win the conference, whatever it may be, is the scheduling, but in particular this year because of the new additions to the conference. So kind of looking through some of those teams, you could see who has the benefit and who may not. I think a team, not that, I actually believe they're going to win, but could be a sneaky squad in contention, and maybe one you look at over their win total would be Rutgers, because they seem to have a very easy schedule that's going to benefit them this year and presumably going to improve year in and year out under Schiano. And they've been a competitive bunch. And now that they're getting out of the East and it's just combined together, that should benefit them. I think Maryland, another team, despite losing Tagovailoa, I think they still could be a team worth a look at in terms of getting over their win total. And then obviously you mentioned Nebraska, and look, it's bowl game or bust. And this certainly has been the mantra each year, but year 2 is when Matt Rule has succeeded. So the expectations are certainly there. The scheduling, the first 7 games definitely present a solid opportunity. And of course, getting Raiola there, the 5-star quarterback, has to set this team up nicely. So, yeah, you could flirt with the idea of taking them to win the conference, but let's be honest, the viable way to bet it with some of these mid to lower teams would be their win total. When it comes down to who's winning the conference, it's boring to say, but to me, it's the chalk with Oregon and Ohio State. And I hate saying that as a better looking for value, but honestly, those are the teams I see best fit to do so.
What do you think of it? Nebraska takes the lead at Jamarcus Lawrence 3, and Ohio State comes right back and snags the lead right back. This might be a fun one in Columbus. What do you think of Penn State? Feels like there's a lot of pressure on James Franklin. They've been good, but not great for probably about 4 seasons now. Just continuous. You know what? It's 10-2, but it's not winning the conference. Do you think in a potentially do-or-die season for James Franklin, where he's got a lot of returning talent, that this could be the year for the Nittany Lions?
You know, I think a lot of people are going to believe that to be the fact with Penn State, Elijah. The thing that holds me back is the quarterback play with Aller or Lar. I forget how you pronounce his last name, but yeah, okay, Aller. So with him, there were spots last year that, yes, he performed well, and you went, okay, this kid has potential. But for a majority of it in the big situations, I just wasn't impressed. Now, yes, he could take a big leap forward, sure. And like you mentioned as well, you're getting a lot of returning talent, but I'm just not someone who's going to chase this steam and this expectation that a lot of the public is perceiving to see come to fruition with Penn State, because the conference is going to get harder. Yes, they've been on the harder side of the conference before, but Ohio State, in my mind, gets better. Sure, they may have a leg up on Michigan, but in terms of the Pac-12 competition, I don't think they're going to have enough offense to compete. So I'm not really ready to buy into Franklin and company this year.
Danny Burke with us here. Burke's Best Bets. It's Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager. Daddy, what's on your radar the end of this week and into the weekend?
Yeah, tonight I got a couple player props that I wrote up a bit about. We got 2 games nationally televised tonight, 1 prop in each of those. The first one, the Warriors, who have been a hot streak as of late. They're heading to Madison Square Garden to take on Jalen Brunson and the Knicks. And speaking of kind of chalky, boring plays, these are the 2 superstars that I am backing their overs. It seems obvious, but I do think they're set up in nice spots. Steph Curry, the first one. I bet him over 26.5 points at the price of -122 earlier today. The Knicks, yes, led by Tom Thibodeau. They do have a stout defense, but where they've struggled has been around the perimeter. They rank 23rd in shot attempts allowed and then shot success rate from deep. And, well, we know what Steph Curry loves to do. And it's kind of one of those things as well, guys, where you see these star players really want to perform extra when you get into the limelight at Madison Square Garden out in LA. So Steph Curry's been holding back these past few games, hasn't eclipsed 20 points. I think he'll be able to do that in a good fashion tonight. So I got Curry over his points prop. And then the other game also broadcasted nationally tonight, a rematch of the NBA Finals. We got Elijah's Denver Nuggets taking on the Miami Heat. I like Denver in the game, but I'm going to wait for a better in-game number, just like yesterday with Denver. They kind of get in these slow spurts, but then once they figure it out, they're on cruise control. And I think Miami, in this road swing that they've been on, will fall victim to it. Now, the play that I did make, though, was Jokic over his points prop at 25.5. The dude averaged over 30 points in the finals against these guys. This is not the same Miami defense that we've been accustomed to. They are brutal from mid-range, specifically short mid-range, and that's where Jokic absolutely dominates. And we know that he can get his own at the rim as well, and that's the next worst part of the Miami defense, is defending shots within 4 feet of the bucket. So Jokic, another top-tier player, prime for a great outing, and I think he's going to display that against a team he did really well against in the postseason. So give me Jokic over 25.5 points. Snag that at -104.
And how well has Jokic been playing? 4 straight games where he's gotten a triple-double before the fourth quarter has even started. He's been on one recently, so I like that. We had Moonbot chime in back in hour 1, though. He said he's got a parlay tonight, money line on Nebraska, money line on the Nuggets, and he's looking for somebody else for that parlay to take a money line on. Danny, any thoughts there, or do you tell him to just lock in with the 2?
Okay, let's see here. Well, what's it look like? Nebraska's out on top now. Okay, so that we're looking good there.
15-2 run.
I kind of like the Suns' money line if you want one that isn't that much risk.
Yeah, the Suns have just screwed me so many times. So maybe not so many times. It's been like 3 times. I keep thinking they're set up in a nice situation, and then they blow the lead in the fourth quarter. So if I hadn't got hurt from them in the past, obviously you got to put the blinders on, not have recency bias and take emotion out of it. Yes, the Suns would absolutely be the play for that because they're the better team, and the Rockets are abysmal away from home. But I have a personal vendetta against them, so I won't do it. But for anybody else out there, I'm sure you'll be able to manage it, and they'll cruise easily. So, yes, I would agree with Phoenix probably being a good spot.
Danny, like 20 seconds here, a tough question always to answer, but if you had to bet on somebody, who's winning the national championship in this year's NCAA tournament?
Ooh, I think I'm going to go with Kentucky right now. And it's not that I've done a lot of scouting for these odds. Again, when it comes to college hoops, until we get closer to tournament time, I rely on a lot of other respected handicappers. They've treated me well with a couple bets. I know some guys like their price and their potential, so I'll claim a little bit of the thought here to the Kentucky Wildcats.
Danny, tell folks about your site and podcast real quick.
Yeah, BurkeSpeed.com, doing write-ups pretty much every single day, especially now on NBA. Podcasts will be covering that. Burke Speed, Spotify, Apple will be covering baseball next week and getting into that soon enough.
Danny Burke at Danny Burke 5. Follow him on Twitter, BurkeSbeat.com. And Pride of Chicago will check in next time. Thank you much.
Sounds good, fellas. Have a good one.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time, a Thursday, it's Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager, back on the road tomorrow at PBA for a live show. And then locally, we'll have plenty of action at state tournament time when we talk PBA and the semis. Myself and Elijah will have the nightcap with Southwest in action. And then in front of us, we'll have Connor Clark and Tim Bob doing the North Star girls game. Got to shout out Tim Berda, Southwest girls basketball coach. We love Timmy B. Now, we're fans of all Lincoln programs. We're not rooting per se, but Berda's just awesome. 250th career win as head coach of the Southwest girls last night.
And the
El Paso crew, his friends and neighbors had the 250 shirts on. In the front row of PBA last night.
Well, it just speaks to how good that program is that he's built.
Eight straight state trips.
8 straight district titles. None of those wild cards. 8 straight trips to state on a district title, up to 250 wins, I believe, in 8 seasons.
Mm-hmm.
That's incredibly fast to be able to reach that point, that mark. Hats off to Tim Baird. That's a really, really good Southwest squad. I mean, everyone knows Kennedy Williams, that he's got hurt this year, but how about Griffin, leading scorer last night, getting into 20-plus points? She's usually like a 10 and 10.
Bombing away from 3.
Usually like a 10 and 10 type girl. The fact that you have that on your rotation.
That was as good a game as I've seen last night in forever with Southeast Southwest.
It's a 2-point
trading punches. Game. Yeah, 58-56.
Great game.
Great season for the Knights, too. Way to get back to state after 11 years. And growing up, man, it was every year. It was Coach Larson cutting the nets down for the Knights.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're getting ready for semifinal action tomorrow night on locally here on KFOR. And then we're fired up for all of our coverage of Boys State next week. So,
busy couple weeks for all your friends that are in sports media here in the state of Nebraska. Busy couple of weeks, but some of the most fun weeks you'll get all year long.
Just preps you, and then you get ready for the Big Ten tournament. And then a little madness as the Selection Sunday is coming up the 17th of March. And away you go. I was passing along Danny Burke's, props. He said, give him Steph, give him Joker for over the point total. I was passing that info along to a family member, and he's like, how do you know the guy? Before Daddy went to work for Brent Musburger in Wiesen and then went out on his own with Burke's Beat, Daddy worked with us.
Before he was a professional sports gambler in Vegas.
Before having his own TV show on VSiN, he put up with your dad for 2 hours a day. How do you know him? Just take the info, monkey. I mean, just do it, Junior. How do you know?
Just take it.
It seems obvious, Dad. Well, yeah, but Daddy's killing it in Chicago because he is and because he can. So good for him.
Sometimes just don't overthink the obvious.
No, that's true.
Sometimes just don't overthink the obvious.
We're gonna have to FaceTime Junior and just say, look, tell your sick Delta buddies that this is gold here.
The one that's not so obvious to look at is
buddies.
Take the Jokic under on points, rebounds, and assists because he's had all those triple doubles. I think he's got a high score night tonight with maybe not as many assists. We'll see though.
All right, Pod. Always find us Hail Varsity YouTube channel, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play. Talk to you tomorrow from PBA.